podcast format. It's just kind of all coming out of my face. But what I'm saying is, there's a huge. I've wanted to write a book about all the theories so people can get all this information and see where the theories kind of come together. Like I said, there's a huge tie-in with the Masons and the witchcraft. And that's why I highly recommend people look up the researcher L.A. Marzulli. Because this is literally, have you ever heard of him?
L.A. Marzulli, what book was it?
He has many books, but L.A. Marzulli he's a Christian author, but he's the only Christian supernatural researcher. And he goes from A to Z, man. I mean, this guy studied everything. I could tell you about the Serpent Mound in Ohio. I could tell you about the Stonehenge in New Hampshire. I could tell you about the cover-up of the giants, the race of giants in the United States, and how if you go to Lovelock Cave in Nevada, there's a cave there that supposedly the giants were burned out of, and the Native Americans fought them. The Native Americans know about all this stuff, but no one listens to Native Americans. Just stay on your land and drink your whatever. People don't listen to the ancient knowledge, but they were there before us. And then, not only is there a cave in Lovelock, Nevada, but then on the Serpent Mound in Ohio, yes, Ohio, there's a big serpent mound, and it's like astrologically aligned, and there it says the giants were buried there. So you have all this giant lore, and yeah, if it was one isolated thing, maybe it's just a story, but there is giant lore across the board, across the world. And so why do these controllers in Tartaria want to reset things? Because there used to be a different world out there where there was giants and Nephilim hanging out, and and maybe there was a free energy world, and maybe they're like, no, we need to bring all this down. Because think about it, if the devil's trying to make you think there's no God so he can capture your soul, think about it. Wouldn't he do all this? Wouldn't he be the controller? Doesn't this ancient book tell us there is some kind of thing? The Bible says that the devil is a roaring lion that is out there to see who he can devour. So I'm not saying that the Bible's true. I'm saying I believe it's true, but it needs to be put up there with all the ancient books. The Bhagavad Gita, is that what it's called? Could you say that again?
The Bhagavad Gita?
Right, exactly. I don't know that I said it my way, but all these ancient books, we need to get together, see all the parallels, and really get to the bottom of this. But yeah, I think that's what's going on. I think that it's the Bible plus all the things that are not in the Bible, like the Book of Enoch and all the other ancient books, like the Indian. If we get all these ancient texts together, we can start to piece together what's really going on.
Yeah, and so me and you have just so many parallel thinking just in my first podcast.
Yeah.
So just I'm not closing up the show. I'm just
okay, yeah.
We have so many parallels right
Well,
now.
because the thing is, like, I'm glad that we're on this podcast, we're doing it and everything, and you had which you put out there, but like I said, like, you got to come on my podcast sometime, because what I'd like to do is kind of have a structure to it, and what we should do is we should probably just like, it would be kind of cool to write a book together, where we come together, we structure all this. We should just call the book something like a condensing of every supernatural theory. It's a condensing of every supernatural theory and how they all come together.
Yes.
Because if you don't condense this crap, you could be spending days. And I think that no one's really done that. Put a comprehensive book together that explains it all. Also, I think what's fascinating is what demons have to say. Online, you can find people who talk to demons, and you can find out what they have to say.
There's more of that going around now.
Yeah. They had a girl during the COVID where, and do you mind if I just kind of, okay. They had a girl during the COVID that was demon possessed, and they were talking to her, asking her questions, and the demon was saying that the Satan has always controlled the pharmaceutical, the hospitals and everything. And I thought that was interesting that a demon was saying that, and she was like, well, look, the ancient staff, it's always been our symbol. There's a snake around it. Why do you think there's a snake around it?
There's 2 snakes.
Right, it's 2 snakes. But also, I thought to myself, I don't know if that relates to, because there's actually a point in the Bible where the Israelites are being plagued by snakes in the desert. They're being bitten, and Moses actually holds up a staff, and it has a golden snake on it. And if they look at it, the snakes no longer bite them. Have you ever heard that story?
No, which it has to be Exodus, but
It's Exodus, I believe.
I can't think of the exact. where I'll read that.
So I know I'm bouncing around quite a bit because I'm trying to kind of, the way my brain works. I don't know how it works. Everybody's brain works differently. My brain, it's like kind of like using the powers of ADD to think as many different supernatural things I can remember in the past and how they kind of come together. Um, so, but I'm also trying to relate it back to the Tartaria thing, which there's a great Tartaria video online. It's like 6 hours long. It really explains this. Here's something we didn't touch before. Um, the Tartaria video I watched online, and I wish I could remember the guy. It was so long ago, but he has this great voice. He said that the moon, he believes it's a map. If you look at the moon, the moon is actually a map of the real world, of all the major continents, including the ice, that stuff out the ice wall and everything.
I haven't heard this one before.
Right. He says there's a map on there, and if you look at all the craters, and if it's like that's a map. I thought that was a little far fetched, but I think it's worth mentioning. But he really kind of explains it. Also, what's true about the not true, but what they touch on in the video is the world's. Have you heard about the World's Fair of like 1920 or something? Like they had so they built like this huge structure, and then they supposedly tore it down. So that's another thing that's part of the Tartarian mud flood, that some of these things were repurposed, but they couldn't repurpose everything, so they just tore certain things down. And the architecture back then, the whole argument is that certain architectures could have never been made with the technology they had supposedly back then.
Well, that's the thing. Ancient civilizations, whether they're within this ice wall or the other ice walls, they were more advanced than where we are now. Our world is the old world. Our world is the primitive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. I guess we can kind of start to close it out. But yeah, this has really just gotten me to.
Before.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Before that, I was gonna say there are different levels of types of civilizations, space civilizations out there. So to build one of my favorite games that, of course, the podcast is sort of named after is Chief Masters or Master Chiefs.
Which is Halo, right?
It's Halo. Is that they built these superstructures in space to reset the whole universe, kind of like we were just talking about today.
So this is not even about resetting the world; it's about resetting the universe.
They reset the entire universe. And so they died off, but humans were supposed to be the caretakers of the entire universe. But
really,
they lost a great battle versus the flood.
We blew it.
And versus the Forerunners, and later the other Prometheans and other types of space races they have in there. So I like to look at it, and why I named my podcast Chief Masters was because of it kind of tells a story of humanity in a way, and how we're trying to go back into space travel, into whether it's traveling just a flat Earth or going beyond what we know right now. And in there, we were de-evolved at one point, but we were spacefaring people at one point. Whether it's
I think we're being de-evolved now.
Yeah, exactly. And so ancient civilizations, whether they're class 12, 11, 13, all the classes that are out there, they are able to harvest entire solar systems and planets and neutron stars and black holes. They're able to weaponize these things. And that's what the purpose of evolving kind of is. Our purpose, our noblest purpose of technology is to advance and be one with everything, sort of, in a way, kind of like you were saying earlier. Or just to
keep growing?
Keep growing, yes, keep growing.
Hopefully for the better. That's the problem, that if you grow and you're corrupt, that's how, like, the movie Avatar, they're going over to that planet of the blue people, Pandora, and they're doing what? They're trying to harvest all the resources and destroy it. They're not trying to befriend it. They're trying to do a horrible thing to that tribal people.
And that's exactly what happens in Halo as well. The Earth is running out of resources,
right.
So we're going to other planets, but only there's like there's a war going on with the Covenant in that time.
I looked it up, the reason why Japan attacked China back in the day, and a lot of people don't know this, but Japan, actually, the Holocaust they put on the Chinese was like several times worse than the German Nazi Holocaust. Like if you look at the number of deaths and the raping of Manking, but here's how it all started, because I was curious. It says that the civilian government in Japan at the time could no longer feed the people. So the military took over, and guess what they know how to do? Destroy, and so they needed results. And so if a nation gives up its soul, or a people gives up their soul, and they become willing to do harm to another civilization to feed their own. If you steal from the mouth of your neighbor's children to feed yours, you've gone to the dark side.
Yep.
You know, and
But
so
what is there left to do if it's all survival? If it's all
well, they convince themselves that they deserve it. Like, oh, they're
manifest?
we're above. Yeah, manifest destiny.
Okay.
Yeah, but manifest destiny was more about God, like bringing God everywhere. Wasn't that more about, or was
Well, manifest destiny, whether it's more
like we have the right because we are
God gave us the right to do this. Because
Yes.
He told me I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't. It wasn't that so much for the Japanese because they don't. They have like they worship nature and several different gods. They're like Shinto religion. It's more like nature over there. They just did it because, as far as I can tell, they looked down on the Chinese and they wanted to save their people, and they're like, well, we're taking from you because you don't deserve it like we do, you know. But of course, things change down the line, and you know, I mean, I'm in love with the Japanese people. I mean, every nation on earth, no matter what nationality you are, at some point, the people did good and bad. You know, we've all been savage, we've all been evil, and we've all been good. You know, and so I said that, but we were talking about, you were talking about like the universal, like you were saying that in the game, like we were the original caretakers, but there was corruption in like an intergalactic corruption, and they were doing the same thing. Like we're back to Avatar back. Yeah, so that's without a divine standard.
Somebody wanted to take control. That's
Yeah.
always the case everywhere we go.
That's always the case. Without a divine standard, that's unfortunately what it goes to. But if you're, I don't know. Sometimes I think if you're evolved enough, you don't have the need to take from and destroy other things. You know.
So I was listening to one of my favorite TikTokers, and she was like, "Evil has every right to exist in divinity, all divinity, just as everything else."
That's an interesting take. Evil has. Let's go over that. So evil has the right to exist.
Just like everything else.
It doesn't. Here's the thing. Does it have the right to exist because it's necessary to grow and to learn?
Well, that's where freedom and justice comes in, right? We take it upon ourselves to say, you are evil, this is evil. What if it's not evil? It doesn't matter. The justice and the law system say it's evil.
That's why diplomacy is important. Now, here's something, that concept I came up with years ago, and actually I have several different bands, and one of my band's names is Story Machine. And so the idea behind Story Machine is that the universe is a story machine, and it creates different, it's like you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It creates different highs and different lows and different cultures and different like misunderstandings and evil and good, because it creates a story. It's like if we had an AI right now and we said, okay, here's your task to create never-ending stories. And there was that movie, of course, but the never-ending story is, the story machine is this machine that keeps making tales of love and death, and because without all that, there is no story, there is no movie. You know what I mean? And what do we do when we get together? We share stories. We share movies that impact us, or books. And so what if this whole existence is a big story machine? And when we die, we're like, oh, great, that all wasn't real. It was just we were creating stories, and now I'm ready to jump back and be reincarnated and become another story, you know? And, I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation, but I think there's something to it because, Jesus, they said that before he was there in the beginning with God. Like the book of John says, in the beginning there was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, the Word is supposedly Jesus, so it's like Jesus came to earth. He existed in heaven, so he incarnated as Jesus, and then he stayed Jesus. But he existed before then. Some people even believe, I've heard even Christian preachers say this, that there's a person in the Bible named Melchizedek, and Abraham had met up with him, and it said that he was the king of Salem, and that Abraham tithed to him. And the preacher said, well, he could only tithe to him if he was God. So some people think that Melchizedek was actually Jesus in another form. So with that in mind, when we die, the question is, do we go on as ourselves or do we transform into something else? Because the Bible also says that God will give you a new name in heaven. So I think it's something about a name that only you know, which is kind of weird because what's the purpose of a name? But
Other people can know it too.
yeah. So, or unless you just share it with the inner circle. Like, can you imagine the intimacy if you were with someone or a group and they only know you by your secret name, and so therefore there's intimacy. Like if I was walking down the street and someone's like, "Hey, Eric," or if somebody said, "Hey," my secret name was Power Thruster. They're like, "Hey, Power Thruster." I'm like, only my secret friends know I'm called Power Thruster. Now that sounds gay, but not there's anything wrong with that. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying, we know him as the Power Thruster. I'm never. That's 10 years from now. I'll be in a club somewhere. Like, hey, what's up, Power Thruster? They're gonna bring this up. This podcast. Yeah. I've doomed myself. But wow, man, it's just so vast talking about all these things because they're all tying together and back, like I said, it's a big story machine, man.
Yeah, and I came up with most of these topics, ideas just from the flat Earth, So all these just this is just one of the many subjects I want to cover for today. Like we still got reincarnation, spirituality.
Yeah,
I was stumbling on my words earlier, but I was trying to talk to you about my book. I was trying to get to like you. In my book, I was talking about the multidimensional beings. That do they come here by accident, or do we bring them here?
The multidimensional beings. Like, give me an example. Like spirit guides, or
aliens or demons, spirit guides, angels, whatever you want to call them. They could all be different. They could all be the same. They could all take many forms.
Well, the Bible says that it says something like this in the New Testament. It says that always remember to do good, and remember sometimes you could be entertaining angels. Mm-hmm. So Paul was saying that, hey, these angels, the good ones and the bad ones, are among us, and they're in disguise a lot of times. So he admits that it happens. So they could be all around.
Yep.
And they could also not be in the flesh. They can come in a spirit form in a dream. Because I do think dreams are spiritual sometimes.
Oh, there was two topics that people kind of mix together with. Is that a dragon, a Chinese dragon in particular, this
right.
type of thing. It has the antlers of like a deer. It's got the claws like a dragon. It's got the tail. Got all these types of creatures mixed into it. At least 17 different creatures, something like that, mixed into one dragon. Somebody was comparing the dragon to a human being that through our evolutionary cycle that we are born contains all the animals that have ever existed on this planet. In our evolutionary cycle, just being pregnant, we go from a little to a baby.
I want you to consider this. If, like I said before, if angels, they are known as changelings because the devil became the serpent in the Bible, in the garden, but he's an angel. He's a changeling. If you were a changeling, think of the amount of expression you could have. Like, for instance, when a person puts on clothing, they're expressing themselves.
Yes.
Well, if you're a changeling, you don't need clothing. You can express yourself through, like Liquid Terminator, like Odo from Star Trek. You can meld in anything. So if today I felt like, you know what, I'm going to rock some horns, and my lips are going to be orange, and my eyes are going to be purple, and I'm going to have the hands of an eagle today or whatever. I mean, as a changeling, you have that ability to express yourself in many different animal forms. So I could be like some kind of chimera walking around, and the next day I could change into something else. And so I think shapeshifters, that's part of it, And some of those Nephilim still have the angelic gift of shapeshifting. That's why they're shapeshifters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, when we do make it back to source, or when we die, or when we are back to the great reset, our own personal reset,
right?
Whether it's reincarnation or some type of other form of spirituality.
If that's where we go, it's a source.
Then we get to choose our bodies when we come back the next life. So we can come back with horns.
Yeah.
That's a partial version of partial shapeshifting. But we don't know what any of those creatures can do in their dimension, their realms, wherever they're coming from, or they're going to.
Well, it's like Q in Star Trek. He can change it any whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and there's no limitations.
He's a god from a different dimension, or every person every god in that dimension is a god. You were saying something.
In the Q continuum, they're all gods.
Gotcha.
And they, for the most part, they don't kill or do anything evil. They just the character Q, he likes to do mischievous things, but he's always trying to teach us a higher lesson. But with his own justice, though.
I like the Sonic Q.
Yeah, but he's considered like a Loki type character.
Gotcha.
But the other Q members are not like him. They're a lot more just. He's the one that's like the prankster, like the
the
like,
rebel in the.
yeah, he's like the Loki of the bunch.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And he's the Qs judge each other. So there's actually episodes where he's called into judgment because of what he's doing.
Messing with the fabric of reality.
Yeah, and they take away his powers one episode where he's just human.
Gotcha. And he has to learn how to get them back, sort of, in a way.
Well, yeah, he's... And also, there's another one where a Q tried to kill itself, and he was punished by the other members. Are like, you're not allowed to kill yourself. And then, he fights for the right to kill himself at the end.
Q sound... This type of interdimensional being sounds similar to just like being the average human being. We shouldn't kill ourselves. We shouldn't do bad things. We should be more just. But
I don't know. Killing yourself, it depends on the situation. Like, what if the choice is, I could let these worms and these piranhas eat me alive, or I could take the cyanide pill. You know what I mean? Like, if you know what's coming, like if you know that people are coming to rape you and your children, like in the butt everywhere, are you gonna take the cyanide pill or you're gonna die? It depending if you're if you're Bruce Lee, then of course you beat the shit out of him. But if you know, like let's put it this way: so there's these big dragon things that a man could never fight, a big Nephilim, like 15 feet tall. You know they're coming to rape you and your family. Are you gonna take a cyanide pill or let them do it? You know what I mean? So if you had a choice, what would you do? Sit there and watch your family get raped, or come on, kids, drink the Kool-Aid and we'll all be dead?
Well, that's one of the big mysteries in life that I like to look at now that you're bringing that up, is that suicide to me, it's seen as one of the greatest punishments a human can do to yourself. It kind of keeps you back in this loop. So who's to say that when you commit suicide, you relive your whole life? The same life you just relived over and over again.
Who knows?
Until you get back to that decision and you live through that suffering that you have to suffer. The obstacles are not in your path, they are the path. I like to.
So again, the obstacles are not in your path; they are your path.
So even if that death, even if you don't want that death, if you kill yourself before your death, does it send you to your next life, or do you relive that life over?
I don't know. It just depends on who's controlling the buttons.
Yeah.
And I think I like to think there are watchers, or there's the heavenly host, or God, and at the end of it all, he has some judgment and tells you where you're going from here. There's also I think this is also in a Sylvia Browne book that when people die, they go through a recalling of their life, but they get to recall it by experiencing the emotions of everyone else around them. And in that way, they can bring judgment on themselves. Because if you can experience your life right now, like and fast forward, and experience all the emotions of what you've caused other people to feel, it would give you an understanding of like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. It's one of the reasons like sociopaths can't change, because they have no understanding they can't picture what it's like to be someone else.
Yeah. Well, the way I like to look at it, heaven is very hard to get into. It's a specific type of.
I don't know, but not according to the Christian faith. It's not.
Well, you have to be 100% pure in my.
But that's not what it says, though.
No, but the way I'm looking at it.
The way you're looking at it.
So the way I'm trying to tell you is that heaven, to me, you have to be 100% pure, or trying to get to 100% pure to get to heaven.
Okay, but where are you getting, like, I mean, that's just your personal.
10 Commandments.
That's just your personal belief. Okay.
10 Commandments, so what I was saying earlier, and that just combining the two, it's trying to keep you as pure as possible. But in my belief, nothing is really pure unless it's really born that way. Nothing really gets the purity.
Right.
No matter how hard you try.
Well, that's why Jesus says you must be born again.
Mm-hmm. And the waters that cleanse you in the baptism, and all your sins are cleared up. That's it's way too easy than that. You have to work hard to get there, and.
Well, there's different ways to look at it. It just depends if you're having a conversation about doctrine, or we bring it back to just because I'd love to discuss Christian doctrine, but I thought you were coming from another point of view with what you were saying, because you were mentioning God. But are we talking about the Christian doctrine, or are we talking about just God in general?
Christian doctrine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking about basically we're comparing our interpretations, because at the end of the day, it's all about your interpretation. Some people have taken the Bible and they've killed people with it.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
And that's what I've been noticing more about Christianity. The closer I get to it, is that Christianity is more of how you see it yourself, more than actually what it's trying to tell you.
If we were talking about Peter Pan, like say we both read the book Peter Pan, we're both going to have a different interpretation of that book.
Exactly. Yes.
And so, I think everybody should have their own interpretation of it, but at the same time, I think it should be, if it's really the truth, that it should be discussed and kind of, you should have a consensus with the people you respect. You know what I mean? Like, if you're part of a Christian group, you should. I think it's good to compare notes and say, well, how do you feel this? What do you think this is really saying? And then kind of come to an overall consensus of what's the right thing. But at the end of the day, you got to make your own decision what you believe, because even Christians disagree.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to say about the Ten Commandments. When I asked somebody, a teacher or any Christian, is that is that how you get to heaven? Following the Ten Commandments?
Right, right.
And their answer, they didn't give me an answer. They told me, "Do you follow all 10?"
Right.
And so we just had this conversation. It's just like, I don't think anybody can follow all 10, but we do our best. That's all.
So let me get your take on it. What's your take on Christianity? You believe it's by following the Ten Commandments? Because the New Testament actually says that's not the case.
Love one another, love one another, and love God. Those are, remember these two.
Well, Jesus was asked, what two commandments
well, if you follow those two, the rest.
He said, love God with all your heart, and then love your neighbor as yourself, and everything hangs on that. But just sharing a quick doctrine thing on my end. Well, according to the writings of Paul and the Gospels, it says that your faith in Jesus is your salvation, like believing He is the Son of God. But then it also says that the faith without works is dead. So it's a matter of accepting Jesus and then living to honor the gift of that grace. So therefore, if somebody accepts Jesus, the whole idea is that they accept the change. Like they're happy about God's grace, and therefore they're going to live to honor what God would want for their lives. So if you accept Jesus, but then you're out there living your life in an ungrateful way, then I believe that you didn't really receive it. You know what I mean? You don't really receive the grace. You're just kind of doing it because you're like, oh, well, I'm just doing it to do it. But if you receive that grace, you go, you know what? Now I'm going to live to honor it, by being a loving person, by those two things, by loving God and loving people, So that's what I think. That's my personal take on the doctrine. Because we were talking about the Ten Commandments. It's not so much if you're following every Ten Commandment. It's receiving the grace and belief in Jesus, and then living your life to honor those commandments. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, and so I was still, I've never died, so
right.
I mean, at least I've never been up to heaven. So.
I think about it a lot. You ever think about death, man?
I think about it all the time. I've had several experiences where
you had a near-death experience?
I've had a few. Yeah.
Wow.
Construction.
Tell us about it.
Well, I got struck by a cord right here in my neck, but it was still live. But when it touched me, it didn't go off. But when somebody else touched it, it like went off. But I remember it touching me right here. So I don't even know if I'm alive or I'm not here right now. If I'm really a ghost,
You could be, yeah.
If one of my 9 lives was taken from me because I'm Ocelot,
Right, yeah.
And then another time, this pipe just came out of nowhere, almost hit me on the head. Just like we weren't even cutting pipes that day.
But did you have some kind of a spiritual vision or something?
No.
But you're just saying you came close to death.
Yeah. You talk about the actual near.
Well, I'm talking about like a near-death experience. That's something like you have some kind of a vision.
Oh no! The closest thing I had was I was telling you yesterday during the interview was I was just talking about near death. I'm sorry, not really near death.
There actually is a website, and it's just called Near Death Experience. I think .org, but people can report, and people do report their near-death experiences every day. And you can look on there every day. There's like at least 4, and there's thousands of near-death experience. And it's not just from Christians. It's from everybody.
Okay.
And it is one of the most fascinating resources of the supernatural we have online today. And I would look it up, but my phone's off. But it's definitely a .org. If you just put in NDE.org or just Google that, if that's not what it is, but it's close to that. But what a fascinating resource.
Yeah, I guess I could say as a Pisces, I dream. I have very intense dreams.
That's great.
So that's the closest thing I have to a near-death experience. One of my dying in one of my dreams, and then waking up in this world.
Yeah, I die a lot in my dreams. I always get shot.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But in the dream, usually a shot in the stomach. In the dream, I usually go to the hospital, and then I usually like recover somehow. I don't know, but I always think in the dream I'm gonna die, but I'm always like, well, I'm not dead.
Well, when it comes to dreaming, now that's where we go back to like the multiverse and the other planes, the other dimensions.
Yeah,
And
remember
then
that movie, The One, with Jet Li? Every
yeah,
time he dies, the power goes into that
yep,
other
yep, yep.
version of
I
him.
remember that one. And so at the end, there was only the one. He became all powerful, kind of godlike at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
And but Multiverse of Madness, I'm a huge Marvel and DC fan, but I haven't brought it up this whole conversation just because I kind of didn't want to. But
Multiverse of Madness. I think I saw that one. Yeah.
Doctor Strange is
Yeah. Was that the one with the? He was like a zombie too.
Yeah. So, but in the very beginning, he wakes up dreaming. The other Doctor Strange dies in the dream he's having. Then that body comes back, and that one becomes a zombie at the end.
Right, right.
But he's like he's dimensional traveling. He's dream walking.
Did you see Loki?
The first season 2 just started, but I'm still finishing up season 1.
Season 2 is over already.
Season 2's over already.
It's over already.
Okay.
There's only 6 episodes.
Oh shit, my bad. So I'm way behind then.
Yeah, you're not the only one, but because I was talking to somebody else and they said the same thing. They're like, "Oh, it's out already." I'm like, "Yeah, it's out already." It's been out. But it's interesting how they wrapped it up. But that the thing is, the multiverse is pretty much covered in Loki. That Kang is kind of like the caretaker of like all the different timelines.
Yeah, and that's going way big out there. Besides, like, if we're trapped here and there's still a huge multiverse compared just to our little sort of other continents, if they exist and out there.
I think we've all fantasized as children when we went into the forest. We always wanted there to be some kind of portal that took us to another world. Have you ever thought about that? Like,
well, I have. I had my own imagination to take me to my own worlds, but I agree.
But can you imagine if you found a door and you opened it and it
Alice in Wonderland?
It's right. It
Prince
took
of
you
Terabithia type of thing.
right, or like a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of thing.
Witch in the Wardrobe. Everybody wants to have a little bit of magic, but I think in a way religion takes that away from us, and so I guess
That sounds more like science if you think about it. A dimensional portal from one realm to the next. Sounds more like science, but science and magic kind of coexist at a certain point.
That's another thing.
They are the same thing eventually.
So my book, I forgot to name the title. To tell you the title of it, I call it "Don't Play with Magic," and it's a book on spirituality where I combine science, magic, how it's all one thing.
Eventually, science is magic, right? Or eventually, magic is science. When you get past, because think about it, it seems like magic, but you're just because you're not educated. Like a lighter is magic to a tribal person who's never seen a flame come out of an object like that. So this is my boomstick. You remember Army of Darkness? He had the gun. He's like, "This is my boomstick." So, and some people think that the universe is unknowable. But back to, have you ever tried explaining yourself to a cockroach? Maybe in our own minds, our mind is not big enough to understand it. And then somebody on Joe Rogan said that on DMT, they went to the other realm, they understood reality, but when they had to come back into the body of a man, the body of a man was not designed to. It'd be like, okay, take all the information in the world and download it into an Atari. It can't handle it. It wasn't designed to handle the information. Or you take a flash drive that has 6 gigs and try to put a terabyte in it. It's not designed to hold that.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're dealing with as a human. We're the finite trying to understand the infinite.
Do you know about the higher densities and lower densities and spirituality, or the
Probably not. Go ahead.
So
are chakras or something, or what?
chakras and everything. Sorry, I'm going to find the page real quick.
Different vibrations and.
Here we go.
Like if you could vibrate at a certain level spiritually, you can tap into different.
So humans, we're in the 3rd density, which is self-awareness, and we're trying to get to love and unity. But that's which is the 4th, and they're all connected to the chakras. And so, but when we achieve the gateway to unity, which is number 7, or the crown chakra, we should be able to have all our higher selves and everything, our ethereal body, our flame bodies, all our bodies in sync, so we know, just like hyper aware of what we truly are in the universe. So when it comes to our higher and lower bodies, we're already in the 12th dimension. We're already at source. Source is just looking down on ourselves, taking care of ourselves. Does he want to go and do that today? If he does, I got his back. That's your higher self talking to yourself. If that's making sense a little bit. It's just, we're children enjoying ourselves, having fun on this planet. And one thing I've always told myself is, why is there no God of fun? There's a God of competition, there's a God of like sporting, there's a God of this, the God of that. But there is no God of just self-enjoyment, self-fun. Not just
Have drinking, you Googled that?
Not just drinking. No, there isn't one. If I were to pick somebody, this is just my personal thing, I would pick SpongeBob SquarePants, or just some kind of loony character out there.
Yeah, like Bugs Bunny or
somebody.
God of fun. Yeah.
God of fun. And I don't know if you saw the latest of Space Jam 2, when they go, it's all AI in that one.
I didn't see either one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one, that the Looney Tunes, they came from some kind of dimension, and the second one, and then the aliens came from outer space. So we are dealing with dimensions and space in the first one.
Right.
In the second one, they go inside of a computer where everything is just whatever we can think of in a computer happens in the computer. So it's just massively expanded to everything that Warner Brothers and every other company has ever created, because it's all in the computer, and they all just come out then and there at that. In this,
right.
And the huge scene at the end, like you can, everybody from everywhere is there. And so, when you talk about stuff about the higher densities, beings that have activated their seventh or their sixth type of.
Well, how do you activate, through meditation?
It's a wonder meditation. You have to do certain rituals. You have to. It's all about activating your light bodies in a way.
And these techniques come from what tribe, what people?
Well, it's a lot of it has to do with the Indian, which I'm not too familiar with. I'm barely getting into, and we'll save that for another podcast.
Like from India or Native Americans?
India.
Okay.
Native Americans, yeah. But Native Americans, they have their own. I'm not too familiar. I don't dive into cultural types of things, because that's how you get canceled nowadays.
Dude, we've never had a movie where you had a Native American and a guy from India hanging out, like a buddy comedy.
Oh, I've never, no.
It could be called Two Indians, but one's the India from India and one's like the Native American one. It would be a great comedy, I think, because you never see them together.
Okay. We should set that up.
Definitely India has better food, though.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but what this was talking about here, it also talks about the higher civilizations. They have access to not just our flat Earth, but it's a giant cosmic laboratory where we are sought here to create, improve ourselves until we return back to source and stuff like that. And yeah, it's all a lot of religion, whatever, life in general. It's all about staying on the good side. But who's can't tell you they can't do a little bit bad now and then.
Well, because we're, I guess, flawed, or we're subject to carnality or greed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since I'm getting a little bit hungry, I guess we should start wrapping up the podcast.
Dude, where are we gonna? Where are we going? Are we going somewhere to eat?
Yeah. Where do you want to go? Somewhere close by, but
some Mexican, I think.
Yeah. Let's close up, and we'll.
Let's do it.
Cool. Chris. All right. I'm ready to close up. This was Wild Eric.
Wild Eric here.
And I'm Ocelot Serrano. We did a podcast today. I don't know what our one time was, but we did an excellent show.
Can I say one last thing before we leave? Okay, YouTube, check out Wild Eric. Also on Amazon, I have a book called Keep Your Inner Child Wild. And also on Spotify, I have a song called Cerebral Soiree. Please support me.
Yep, and you can follow me at WhereJaguar_U on TikTok, Ocelot_comedy on Instagram, and this new podcast called Chief Masters. You guys have a great night.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
That was awesome, man.
Woo, man.
No, but really, we should work on that book to unify the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that would be one.
Yeah.
And so, Chris was the first person.
That was like money.
Oh.
That was good. Thank you. The first time, Joe? Jesus Christ.
No, that was the first time I told Chris about. Chris was the first person I told
How long did
But
we
we're
go?
all pulling from the same elephant, you know. We're just not.
An hour and 50.